Alien Queen declared humans inferior, then gave birth to one. The storm wasn't weather, it was a war zone. From the heavens above the frozen exoplanet, the shuttle screamed through an electric blizzard, its hull vibrating with a death rattle. Jagged arcs of lightning clawed at the atmosphere, as if the very planet resented the intruder. A cacophony of alarms shrieked inside the cockpit. Commander Will Watson gritted his teeth, fingers white-knuckled on the manual controls. "Hold together, you bastard," he growled. "Just 5 more seconds." The AI was dead. Autopilot fried, and the last engine coughed smoke like a dying beast. The ground was a smear of jagged ice and black alien flora, rushing up to greet him. Then, impact. The shuttle slammed into a snowbank, skidding sideways before burying its nose in an icy ravine. The world flipped. Gravity forgot which way was down. Will hung upside down, groaning, blood tracing a hot line down his temple. The cracked cockpit glass showed a nightmarish view of the alien wasteland, blinding snow, skeletal trees swaying in the gale, and no sign of rescue. "Great," he muttered. "Vacation's going exactly as planned." He crawled free of the wreckage, tugging his black combat armor over his lean frame. The suit hissed and locked around him with a comforting snap. Power at 38%. Atmospheric toxicity, manageable. Temperature, -42 degrees Celsius. Mayday. This is Commander Watson of the ESS Hyperion. Emergency landing. Repeat, emergency. Nothing. Static hissed like a snake in his ear. He trudged north, following a geological anomaly on his HUD. With every step, snow clawed at his calves and wind bit through his short blonde hair. The silence was unnerving. No animals, no distant machinery, just the sound of his breath and the whisper of dead snow. Then something moved. Orange against white, impossibly fast. He spun, rifle up. There. A figure stepped into view from behind an icy ridge. 8 feet tall, regal, terrifyingly graceful. She wore armor of interlocked scales that glowed faintly, like molten copper cooled in geometric patterns. Her skin was sunburst orange, her eyes twin gold slits, feral and intelligent. Her weapon, a fusion spear plasma hybrid, was already leveled at his chest. Will raised his hand slowly. "Well, hello there." She blinked once, unamused. "You are either very brave or very stupid to enter the territory of the Solari Empire, human." "Let's go with brave," he said, flashing his best crooked grin. "Commander Watson, just passing through." "I am Queen Aurelia," she said, voice like thunder wrapped in silk. "And you are now my prisoner." He kept smiling, but his mind went tactical. Her stance, her weapon range, the terrain, they all painted one conclusion: he wouldn't survive a fight. Yet she hadn't fired. "Flattered," Will said, lowering his rifle just slightly. "Though I usually like dinner before captivity." A sound escaped her. Not quite a laugh, but not nothing. Typical human arrogance. Not arrogance, charm. Works better indoors though. You may not feel it yet, but this storm's getting mean. She frowned slightly, then blinked at a sudden gust of wind. Snow whirled between them, and for the briefest moment he saw her armor shiver with cold. "You dare suggest I fear a mere blizzard?" "I suggest we survive it, together, temporarily," he added. She hesitated, then slowly she lowered her weapon. "My outpost is close. You'll follow, as prisoner." "Lead the way, Your Majesty. I'll try to keep up." Short human legs and all. They moved through the snow like shadows. Will watched her move. Fluid, lethal, yet not cruel. Her steps made no sound. Her hair, long and metallic red, danced like flame. They arrived at a solid rock wall. With a flick of her hand, part of the cliff dissolved to reveal a camouflaged hatch. They stepped inside. Warmth hit him like a drug. Artificial lighting bathed the corridor in amber. Will exhaled for the first time in minutes. "This is a cozy prison," he said, brushing snow off his shoulders. "I did not build this for your comfort," Aurelia replied icily. "You humans have delusions of importance. And yet here I am, in your secret cave, with you." She didn't respond. The silence was electric. Then, boom, the mountain shook. A shockwave knocked them off balance. Ice cracked. Steel groaned. The tunnel behind them imploded in a roar of snow and rock. Will reacted first, tackling her forward as the ceiling collapsed. They landed together, bodies tangled in the flickering emergency lighting. His armored chest pressed against her scaled armor, her golden eyes wide. They stared. "I take it back," Will muttered. "Coziest prison I've ever been in." She didn't slap him. She didn't kill him. She smiled. The silence after the collapse was deafening. Dust and flakes of ice drifted through the damaged corridor like spectral fireflies. Will groaned, shifting to one knee, armor groaning beneath him. "Well," he muttered, "that's one way to get close to royalty." Aurelia stood slowly, brushing shards of glimmering ice off her shoulder guards. Had I known human mating rituals involved avalanches, I would have brought protective headgear. Will smirked. "Oh, that was foreplay. You should see the dancing part." Her eyes narrowed. "You are insufferable. Only when I'm awake." She turned, stalking down a secondary corridor illuminated in a faint bioluminescent blue. Will followed, noting the architecture, fluid curves in black alloy, walls that pulsed faintly like something alive. Alien tech, elegant, efficient, cold. Much like his host. They arrived at a circular chamber, part command center, part throne room, carved into a natural cavern of ice. Holographic displays hovered in the air, showing planetary schematics, atmospheric data, and one ominous red icon blinking. Intruder detected. She gestured. "Sit." "No chains? I find your species' sense of freedom amusing." Will took the offered platform, a flat, hexagonal slab of obsidian alloy. "Comfy. Really warms the soul." Aurelia studied him from her elevated platform. "Your crash? Was it intentional? A scout mission? Or are you merely incompetent? Can it be both?" Her jaw tightened. "You mock everything. Even now. It's how I stay alive. If you'd prefer I sulk and die quietly, I can reschedule." A pause. "Then, I've encountered many humans in battle. None like you." Will cocked an eyebrow. "And here I thought I was forgettable." "You are dangerous?" she said flatly. "Not because of your weapons, but because of this." She pointed to his chest. "Whatever chaos fuels your kind, emotion, instinct, it breaks logic." He leaned forward slightly. "Funny? That's exactly why we survive. Logic builds walls, emotion breaks them." Their eyes locked. Then the lights flickered. A low whine echoed from deeper in the structure. Will stood. "That doesn't sound good." Aurelia tapped a panel. "The storm interfered with the reactor. Power cells are compromised. Auxiliary will last 12 hours. "You've got backup?" "Not unless I signal the Empire, and I will not." "Because they'll come with guns instead of blankets." She didn't answer. Will looked around, then back to her. "Okay. Listen, we're trapped. Resources are limited. Temperatures outside are a frozen hellscape. You may be taller, stronger, and probably glow in the dark, but you're not built for full-on survival without support. I am." Her golden eyes narrowed. "You suggest I rely on you?" "I'm suggesting we work together. Temporarily. I'm not asking for tea and foot rubs." He held up a small device, a kinetic field emitter. "I can seal that breach in your ventilation system. Keep your air clean. Also, I have 3 protein rations and a thermal gel patch. Want to play survival bingo?" Aurelia stared at him for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, she stepped closer. "You will repair the vent. You will not access any data core. You will remain under observation. I feel so trusted." "Trust is irrelevant. Utility is not." He turned toward the console and got to work. As he patched the cracked vent with the field emitter, he noticed something curious. Her gaze lingered, not on his hands, but on his posture, his movements, studying him. He smiled to himself. "She's still figuring me out." "Why did you become a soldier?" she asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. "I had a brother," he said quietly, not turning. "He was on one of the first colony ships to Aegis 9. They didn't make it. Pirates. I enlisted the next day." A pause. "Revenge?" "At first, then to protect people like him. Not very original, I know." She said nothing, but the silence was no longer cold. It was contemplative. Will stepped back. "Done. Vent sealed. Temp regulation back to stable." "You are efficient," she said, almost begrudgingly. "And you are almost complimentary," he shot back. She turned away, but he saw it, just the corner of her mouth twitching, a smirk. Small, real. Suddenly the lights dimmed further. The temperature dropped by several degrees. Aurelia froze. Storm intensity increasing. The reactor core is weakening. How far to the backup generator? Through the lower catacombs. But the path is unstable. Of course it is. Will grabbed his rifle. "Guess it's time for our first royal field trip." She raised an eyebrow. "You are eager for danger." "No, I'm eager for warmth and less dying. Let's move, your tallness." As they descended into the flickering tunnels, the storm outside howled like a living beast, battering against the walls of the ancient structure. Snow and time pressed in from all sides. But inside, for the first time, the ice had begun to crack. The lower catacombs were older than the Empire. Carved not by hand, but by ancient geothermal shifts, the tunnels beneath the outpost twisted in ways that felt unnatural. Geometry bending in subtle, disorienting curves. Faint glyphs lined the walls, pulsating with residual energy like memories etched into stone. Will's helmet lamp cut through the dark, casting his and Aurelia's shadows onto the icy walls like fractured spirits. "Who built this?" he asked, ducking under a jagged overhang. "No one knows," Aurelia replied, her voice hushed by the echoing silence. "The Solari found these ruins centuries ago. We built atop them. Cozy, nothing like squatting on haunted architecture. The old empire believed this place to be sacred, a site of transcendence." Will paused, scanning a mural. Alien beings standing in a circle, their heads turned toward a glowing core suspended in air. "Looks more like a last stand than enlightenment," he murmured. She didn't answer. They walked in silence, deeper and deeper into the belly of the mountain. The air grew thinner, colder. Frost formed crystals on the edges of Aurelia's armor. She barely noticed, but Will did. "You cold?" "I do not feel cold the way your kind does." "Not what I asked?" A beat. Then, "I am aware of the cold. It reminds me I am still alive." "Most people use coffee for that," he muttered, then frowned. "Wait, do aliens have coffee?" She glanced at him. "Your constant irreverence is either a shield or a disease, or both, works like a charm." The path narrowed. Will crouched beside a broken panel, prying it open. "This the junction?" Aurelia nodded. "The auxiliary core is through that corridor. But the bridge? Gone," he finished, peering at the yawning chasm ahead. A collapsed walkway stretched across the void like the ribs of a broken animal. Will studied the gap. "I can make that jump. If I don't, try not to laugh too hard at the human-shaped hole. Your kind always assumes death is humorous. It's not. But fear is worse." He took a few steps back, then ran. Leapt. Time slowed. His body soared over the void, barely clearing the gap. His boots slammed into the other side, skidding on ice. He rolled, groaning, then looked up. 10 out of 10 landing, he called. Aurelia didn't hesitate. She activated her boots, levitating in a short burst, landing beside him like a floating blade. No sound, no stumble. Will blinked. Show off. The auxiliary core chamber flickered with fading blue light. Ice coated the floor like fragile glass. At the center, a massive reactor pulsed, weak, erratic like a dying heartbeat. Will stepped forward. "Cover me." As he began rerouting power, Aurelia stood watch, but her mind drifted. She watched him, this human, fragile, short, loud, and yet resilient. No Solari warrior would leap that gap without clearance. No royal would repair machinery with bloodied knuckles and a grin. No one had ever dared speak to her the way he did, like an equal, like a storm to be weathered, not worshipped. She didn't trust him, but she couldn't ignore him. "I've been wondering something," Will said as he worked. "You guys, Solaris, you seem so perfect, physically, tactically, but emotionally? You're flatlined. Is that how you were designed?" "We were shaped by necessity," she said, voice low. "Emotion breeds chaos. The early Solari nearly destroyed themselves with feeling. We evolved beyond it." He paused, then looked over his shoulder. "So you amputated your own hearts to save your bodies?" She met his gaze. "Yes." "That's not evolution. That's fear." Aurelia stiffened. He turned back to the panel. "Humans are messy. We feel too much, fight too much, love too hard, but that's what makes us dangerous. Not our tech, not our ships. It's that we're willing to die for something we believe in, even if it makes no sense." The silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy, charged. Aurelia stepped closer, her voice softer. "And what do you believe in, Commander Watson?" He didn't look up. "Right now?" "You." She froze. A flicker of light surged through the core. The lights brightened. Heat returned to the air like a sleeping giant waking. Will stood, brushing snow from his gloves. "Back up online. You're welcome. You could have died." "Yeah, but imagine how awkward this would have been if I didn't try." She stared at him. For a moment she forgot what her people would say. Forgot the doctrine, the consequences. She only saw him, broken, bold, and somehow beautiful. Then her calm crackled to life. A voice, cold, clipped, spoken Solari tongue. She tensed. Will saw it. "Trouble?" "My guards," she whispered. "They're searching for the crash site? They'll find us within the hour." Will's smile faded. "And what happens when they find me?" Her golden eyes burned, conflicted. "I don't know." Outside, the storm howled louder, but inside, the ice cracked a little more. They ran. The tunnels behind them shook with the sound of approaching troops, heavy Solari boots striking the stone like a war drum. Every footstep reverberated through the ancient bones of the mountain. Will moved fast, Aurelia even faster. Her movements were sharp and deliberate. His were instinctual, chaotic, but no less effective. "They're gaining," she said, breath steady. "Yeah, they're good at chasing. Humans are better at hiding." He turned sharply, ducking into a maintenance shaft barely tall enough for him, let alone an 8-foot alien queen. She hesitated. "I will not fit." "Then get smaller. Or let them shoot me in the back. Your call." Aurelia growled, half frustration, half disbelief, and followed, twisting her frame through the tight corridor with inhuman flexibility. Sparks flew behind them as a plasma bolt ricocheted off the shaft wall. Will swore. "They're shooting inside a relic site? That's just rude." At the far end, a hatch, frozen shut. Will slammed his shoulder into it. Nothing. Again, still sealed. "Step aside," Aurelia said. He did. With a pulse from her gauntlet, a burst of dark energy melted the seal. The hatch creaked open and they fell inside, into darkness. The hatch sealed behind them. Silence. Only the sound of their breathing, ragged and real. Will activated a small flare. The chamber lit up with a soft orange glow, revealing an ancient atrium. Vaulted ceiling, pillars carved like alien spines, and in the center, a fire pit. Long cold, but intact. Aurelia knelt beside it. "There is fuel. We can light it." "You mean, I can light it?" Will pulled a ration pack from his belt, standard human military, protein cube, flint, survival gel. Within minutes, flames licked the air, and just like that, there was warmth. Will sat down, back against a stone bench, letting the fire wash over his chilled limbs. Aurelia remained standing, watching the flames dance. She looked otherworldly, amber eyes reflecting the firelight, armor gleaming like obsidian kissed by gold. But in the heat haze, something softened. "You're bleeding," she said. He glanced at his side. A shallow gash. Occupational hazard. Aurelia crossed to him, kneeling. "May I?" He hesitated, then nodded. She pressed 2 fingers to his skin, cool, precise. A hum of alien tech activated, sealing the wound, but her touch lingered longer than needed. Will looked up at her. "I'm not used to being patched up by royalty. I am not used to caring if someone bleeds," he smiled faintly. Progress. They were close now. Too close. Her breath was steady. His wasn't. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said quietly. "Why not?" "Because it makes me forget the difference." Will leaned in slightly. "What if the difference is what brought us here?" She didn't answer. Outside, the storm screamed, inside only fire and tension. Then, rumble. The ceiling above them cracked. A cascade of snow and stone fell from the chamber wall. The floor quaked. A pillar buckled. Aurelia grabbed Will by the collar and pulled him down with her as debris exploded around them. Darkness swallowed everything. And then, stillness. He opened his eyes, blinking through dust and heat. They were under a collapsed beam, barely sheltered by a slab of stone. Aurelia's body covered his, shielding him from the worst. "You okay?" he rasped. "I am intact." Her arms were still around him. His hand was against her side, their faces only inches apart. "Tell me this isn't the weirdest first date you've ever had," he whispered. Her lip twitched. "I have not had dates." "Then I'm honored to be your disaster," he was joking, sort of. But she wasn't smiling. She was staring at him like he was gravity itself. And then, with no warning, no ceremony, she kissed him. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't sweet, it was survival. It was heat in the cold, instinct in the dark. 2 creatures forged by war, choosing something recklessly human in a place built to erase feeling. When they finally broke apart, the fire was still burning, but quieter, like it knew what had happened. Will exhaled. "Okay. That was unexpected." Aurelia didn't move. "I do not regret it." "Good," he said, "because if this cave collapses again, I'd like to go out on a high note." She looked down at him. Queen, warrior, and now something else. "You confuse me, Will Watson." "That's fair. I confuse myself daily." She laughed. This time it wasn't hidden. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, fire lived. Part 5. Revelation. The fire had died down to embers. Outside, the storm finally quieted. But the silence left behind was not peace. It was the breath before something changes forever. Aurelia sat alone at the edge of the fire pit, armored knees drawn up, arms crossed tight as if holding herself together. Her golden gaze was fixed on the flames, but her thoughts were galaxies away. Will returned from the far end of the chamber with 2 ration packs and a dented canteen of melted snow water. 5-star dining, he said, trying to keep his voice light. Don't say I never treat royalty right. She didn't respond. He sat beside her, not too close, just close enough for the heat between them to remain. You've been quiet, he said softly. I am unsettled. That makes 2 of us, she turned to him, expression unreadable. This, what we did, it was not in the plan. He smiled faintly. Plans rarely survive contact with humans. I broke protocol, violated purity code. I chose warmth over duty. He hesitated, then reached out and gently touched her hand. Maybe that's what makes it real. Her hand didn't pull away, but it trembled, just slightly. Then suddenly her body stiffened. A soft gasp escaped her lips. Aurelia? She clutched her abdomen, eyes wide. Her breath hitched. Will bolted upright. What's happening? Are you hurt? I don't know. She stood, but staggered. Will caught her as her knees gave out. Her skin, once perfectly smooth and radiant, now glowed faintly beneath her armor, subtle pulses of light radiating from her core like the heartbeat of a star. Her body was changing, rapidly. This should not be possible, she whispered, voice shaking. Solari, we do not bond across species. We do not react like this. Will stared at her, heart pounding. Are you saying? No, it's too soon. It's wrong. My body must be rejecting the anomaly. You mean me? I mean what you caused. Will clenched his jaw, gently easing her down to sit against the wall. Her breath was labored. Her eyes kept darting. Fear, calculation, shame. He knelt in front of her. Hey, look at me. She did. You are not a mistake. Her lips parted, trembling. I'm not leaving you, he said, even if you glow like a Christmas tree and sprout tentacles. A shaky laugh escaped her. He smiled. There she is. She looked down at her hands, now lightly lit from within, veins glowing like alien circuitry. This is what your people fear, she said, that we will feel, that we will break from the design. Will tilted his head. Maybe that's not breaking, maybe that's evolving. You speak like a philosopher. No, I speak like a man who just kissed an 8-foot alien queen and might be a dad now. I'm improvising. She blinked. A father? He froze. That's not what I meant. I mean, not yet. I mean, maybe. I don't know how your biology works. Maybe it's a hormonal thing. Maybe it's gas. She laughed again, fuller this time, and then the laughter broke into a sob. A single tear slipped down her cheek, glowing. Will watched, stunned. Your tears glow? It is rare. It means emotional overload. The body cannot contain it. He reached up, gently wiped the tear with the back of his finger. I've seen a lot of things in war, he said. Explosions, death, even a guy who tried to make love to a malfunctioning medbot. She blinked. That's disturbing. Yeah, it was loud too. But this you, glowing, cracking, changing because of a moment we shared, that's the most human thing I've ever seen. She looked at him, no longer a queen or a warrior, but a woman standing at the edge of something terrifyingly real, and for the first time in her life, she let herself fall. Not into danger, into trust. Outside, the sky cleared, but within the chamber, a new storm had begun, quieter, deeper, a fire in the ice. The silence of morning on a dead world is unlike any silence elsewhere. It's not peaceful, it's not calm, it's the silence of before something changes the shape of everything. Aurelia sat by the fire, unmoving. The flames had been relit by Will earlier, and he had left her alone since. She hadn't spoken a word in over an hour. She didn't need to. Her body was already saying what her mind couldn't admit. The glowing beneath her skin had intensified overnight, forming rhythmic pulses across her abdomen, steady, biological, and unmistakable. Not radiation, not injury, life. She could feel it. Not just as sensation, but as presence. Something was growing inside her. Something impossible. Will paced nearby, silent, his face a tangle of awe, fear, and tenderness. He didn't know how to help, so he did the only thing he could. Wait. Finally, Aurelia spoke. It's true, she said, voice quiet, reverent, terrified. I carry something within me. Something that should not be. He turned to her. And yet, here we are. She stood, slowly staring at her reflection in a piece of fractured metal. This is betrayal, she whispered, to my empire, to my purpose, to my very form. Or, he said gently, it's the first honest thing your body has ever done. She flinched. You do not understand. No, he said, stepping closer, but I listen. That's what humans do when we're out of our depth, which is always. Her hands trembled. I am changing. Already, my senses are heightened, my temperature has adjusted, my instincts, they are not my own. He moved even closer now, voice soft but unwavering. You're not broken, Aurelia, you're becoming something new. She shook her head. This child, if it is a child, has no precedent, no place, it is anomaly. It's ours. That stopped her cold. He hadn't meant to say it, but once said it couldn't be taken back. Their eyes met across the firelight. You believe this abomination is a child? No, Will said. I believe it's hope. The kind of hope that scares people enough to start wars. The silence cracked. She stepped forward, chest heaving, light blooming softly beneath her armor. It wasn't just a glow now. It had tone, a faint hum like the resonance of a star felt more than heard. Will's hand reached out, hovering near her abdomen. May I? Aurelia hesitated. Then she took his hand and pressed it against her. He felt it. Warmth, motion, and beneath his palm, a second heartbeat, faint, but real. He inhaled sharply. Oh my God. She closed her eyes. There are no gods here. There are now. They stood like that, locked in something bigger than identity, bigger than blood or duty or planet. Then suddenly the hum shifted. A pulse of energy burst through the air, lighting the chamber with a golden flash. Both of them staggered back. What the hell was that? Will gasped. Aurelia's eyes were wide. The child, it reacted. To what? To us. She stepped forward, placing her palm on Will's chest. His heart pounded beneath her fingers. Then she placed her other palm on her stomach, and something impossible happened. The pulses synced. Two rhythms, separated by species, now beat in perfect time. Boom, boom, boom. Will whispered, It's listening. Aurelia looked at him, overwhelmed. It's learning. Tears welled in her eyes again, not glowing this time, just real. She whispered, almost afraid of the words, What are we, Will Watson? He answered without hesitation, something that never existed before. And in that moment, there was no war, no empire, no fear, only the beginning of something sacred, a spark. The alarm was not subtle. A piercing pulse echoed through the chamber, metallic, ancient, and final. A crimson glyph blinked to life above the exit hatch. Breach detected. Will bolted upright. That doesn't sound like breakfast. Aurelia had already moved to the control panel, fingers dancing across its surface. Her hands were steady, her eyes weren't. Solari units. Elite. They're 10 minutes from the outer ring. He didn't ask how many. It didn't matter. They're tracking my crash beacon, he muttered. I should have disabled it sooner. She turned to him. They're not here for you. They're here for me. And if they see you with me, it will be war. Will looked at her glowing stomach. If they see this, they won't need war. They'll burn the planet. Aurelia didn't flinch. Then we cannot let them see. For a moment, just a moment, he wanted to say it, to beg her to come with him or let him stay. But he saw it in her eyes. She was already preparing to lie. Will say I subdued you, she said coldly, putting on her queen voice like armor. That I extracted all information. You will leave now. Through the subpassage. It leads to the northern glacier. No, he said. Not without you. You must. Will stepped closer. We didn't just survive together. We created something new, that doesn't get left behind. You cannot protect me. I'm not trying to protect you, he said. I'm trying to stand with you. A long pause. She whispered, If they see what's growing inside me, they will terminate me. No trial, no mercy. A queen cannot bear what they'll call impurity. Will's voice dropped to a whisper. Then don't let them call it anything. Let me carry the secret. She froze. He reached into his chest plate and pulled out a small device, a glowing crystal embedded with a neural sync pattern. It's called a fate link. Human tech, experimental. Records memory, instinct, emotion. It's a mirror of you. And of them. He gently placed it in her palm. If they erase you, this won't let them forget. Aurelia stared at it as if he'd handed her a living star. Then, for the second time, she kissed him. This one was different. It wasn't driven by survival, or instinct, or even love. It was promise. Outside, snow roared against the mountain. Inside, time slowed. When they finally broke apart, her forehead rested against his. I will send a signal when it's safe, she whispered. I'll wait, he said. Even if it takes a lifetime. She touched his cheek, soft, almost reverent. Do not wait forever. Then she turned, opened the hatch, and walked away. Will stood there for a second, alone. Fire gone, warmth stolen by duty. Then he ran. The subpassage was narrow, carved through obsidian ice and forgotten time. It opened onto a white tundra stretching endlessly. The wind screamed, but he didn't stop. As he trudged through the storm, he looked back only once, and he saw her. Far behind, silhouetted at the peak, Aurelia, standing like a statue carved of fire and frost, watching him vanish. No words, no waves, just eyes that glowed, and a heartbeat that echoed in both of them still. 3 weeks later, Earth Command, Atlas Orbital Station. The debriefing room smelled like recycled air and suspicion. Will sat at the center, arms crossed, armor scratched, eyes sunken but unbroken. Across from him, behind a shimmering wall of hollow glass, sat 3 admirals and 1 woman who made his blood run colder than vacuum. High Commander Solaria Greaves, human, yes, but more machine than soul. Skin tight over bone, eyes that never blinked unless strategy demanded it. You expect us to believe, she said, voice smooth and scalpel sharp, that you survived a crash on an enemy-occupied ice world, went dark for 21 days and returned without a scratch on your pride? Will leaned back. I broke 2 ribs actually, but thanks for your concern. Where is the Queen? Admiral Keel interrupted. Aurelia, you said she encountered you. She's alive, Will said. She spared me. Why? Solaria asked. Will hesitated, then she said something changed. Solaria's lips curled. Changed? Alien queens do not change. They conquer. Will shrugged. Maybe she met the right human. Kale slammed his fist on the desk. Don't get clever, Commander. You were deep inside enemy territory. How do we know you weren't compromised? Because if I were, Will said coldly, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be sending you ahead in a cryo box. The room went quiet. A long, thin silence. Then Solaria stood. You're relieved of field command, pending internal review. I did what no envoy, diplomat, or sniper has done in this war, he growled. I spoke to her, not as a target, but as a person. And what did it cost you? Solaria's voice turned venomous. What did you bring back? He stared at her and said nothing. Meanwhile, Solari Capital, High Orbit Citadel Queen. Aurelia stood still as stone on her private observatory deck, watching the twin moons of Varelia eclipse over the frozen ocean. She hadn't slept since returning. Every day, the light inside her grew stronger. Every night, she dreamed of a heartbeat that wasn't hers. Her guards thought she was weakened, distracted. Her ministers whispered of instability. She heard everything. She remembered Will's voice in the snow. You're not broken, Aurelia. You're becoming something new. She touched the small crystal he gave her, hidden beneath the throne, woven into her armor's neural matrix. It pulsed gently, a flicker of memory, of warmth. Her most loyal advisor entered, Valerin, tall and silver-eyed. My queen, he said with careful reverence, the council awaits your verdict on the human incursion. Shall we prepare war? She turned slowly. No, she said. Not yet. Valerin flinched. High Commander Solaria is mobilizing. If we do not strike first, we will not strike, she interrupted. We will speak. Speak? I will invoke the ancient accord. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Advisors exchanged glances. That law hadn't been cited in over 4 centuries. That is political suicide, Valerin hissed. You will beg for peace? You will kneel? No, she said. I will stand, for the first time, as something more than a weapon. Valerin's voice dropped, dangerous. They will call you tainted. I am. And what of the child? She looked him in the eye, regal and calm. The child is hope. Back at Earth Command, Will sat alone in his quarters, staring at a small scan chip, unmarked, encrypted, and glowing faintly. Inside it, the last data burst Aurelia had risked her life to send him. Not words, a heartbeat. The same rhythm he felt beneath his hand when she placed it on her stomach. Boom, 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 boom. He played it again and again. It was the only sound that made sense anymore. Then his door opened without warning. A young officer stood there, pale and shaking. Sir, we just intercepted a Solari broadcast. You need to see this. Transmission room 014 standard time. On every human screen, every military base, every colony network, Queen Aurelia appeared. She stood tall, cloaked in shadows, golden light emanating from beneath her chest plate. And she said, I am Aurelia of Solari. I speak not as conqueror, but as mother. What grows inside me is not a weapon, but a future. I ask for asylum. I ask for peace. I ask for choice. Stunned silence gripped every room. Then chaos. In the command chamber, Solaria stood like a statue carved from rage. She dares, she spat. She dares to live, Will said softly. She turned to him, eyes wild. You knew. I believed. She raised her hand to strike him. But he stepped forward, stared her down, and said, "That's my abomination you're talking about." Location: Solari High Council Chamber, Orbital Dome, Atera. The chamber had not been this full in generations. Holograms flickered around the circular Colosseum. Hundreds of delegates from every corner of the Solari Empire. Their visages shimmered with authority, fear, and something rarer, uncertainty. In the center, floating on a translucent disk of energy, stood Queen Aurelia. Her armor was ceremonial now, black with deep crimson veins of light, like a storm encased in glass. Her face calm, but her eyes burned brighter than any weapon. Behind her heartplate, subtle but unmistakable, pulsed a golden glow. The child. The future. An elder voice rang out. "By invoking the ancient accord, you forfeit absolute sovereignty. Do you understand?" Aurelia nodded. "I do." "You are prepared to be judged, to answer for contamination, for consorting with the enemy." "I am prepared," she interrupted, "to redefine the enemy." The council stirred. Murmurs, shocks, a few audible gasps. Aurelia took one breath, measured, deep. Then she said, "I carry within me a life form not by conquest but connection. This child is half Solari, half human. It is not an abomination. It is a bridge." Delegates erupted. Panic, outrage, disbelief. "Hybridization is biological treason. The queen must be relieved. This is a fabrication. She has been compromised." Aurelia's voice thundered over them. "Enough." Silence. She turned slowly, speaking not with force, but with clarity. "I do not ask for your understanding. I offer you a choice. Cling to purity or adapt." Some looked away. Others couldn't stop staring at the gentle glow from her chest plate. Then the center hologram flickered, and Will Watson appeared. His image floated beside hers. Human, wounded, unapologetic. "I didn't come here to plead," he began. "I came to stand next to the woman you're trying to silence." A delegate shouted, "You tainted our queen." Will smirked. "She doesn't get tainted, she chooses." Another voice snapped, "You risked galactic war for what? Lust?" Will stepped forward on the projection platform, his voice steady. "I risked war for the one thing that terrifies all of you. A child born not of order, but hope." Murmurs turned to arguments. Some screens went dark, others drew closer. He pointed toward Aurelia. "She could have killed me. Instead, she loved. She chose to protect what we made." Solari High Matron Thalzan snarled, "That is not love, it is mutation." Will's jaw clenched. Then he said the words that would be replayed across systems for decades. "That's my abomination you're talking about." Silence. Not empty. Reverent. Even Aurelia turned to him, eyes wide. One by one, screens flickered, some switching from red to blue. A sign. Neutral delegates beginning to shift. In the shadows, Valrin watched from the security balcony, fists tight. "She's destabilizing the core of the Empire," he hissed. "No," whispered a younger officer beside him. "She's giving it one." Earth, Deep Council Response Room. Back on Earth, Solaria Greaves watched the broadcast replay from 12 angles. Beside her, intelligence aides scrambled, shouting about polls, public response, military fallout. She ignored them. Her eyes were locked on the hologram of Will Watson, standing tall beside an 8-foot alien queen glowing with the light of a new era. Then she said calmly, "Activate Project Regenesis." Someone gasped, "That's forbidden." "Not anymore," Solaria whispered. "If they want a child to unite the stars, fine. We'll make one that burns them instead." Meanwhile, in orbit, Aurelia and Will sat in the quiet aftershock of history. The council was in recess. No immediate execution orders, no open war, just uncertainty, which, for once, was progress. Will leaned over and whispered, "That went well?" Aurelia arched a brow. "Half the Empire wants to dissect me." "Yeah, and the other half might want to vote for you." She smiled, and for once it wasn't forced. Their hands met, not clenched, just touching. And through it all, the spark between them grew stronger. Not just a love story, but a revolution. Orbit over Varelia, human Solari disputed zone. The stars burned quietly, unaware that war had returned to their doorstep. 3 Solari dreadnoughts tore through orbit in delta formation, black blades slicing across the cold dark. Behind them, 2 human cruisers fired warning beacons, flares screaming like falling angels. Inside the command bridge of the Varan 7, Queen Aurelia stood tall, armor sleek, movements sharp, but her breath shallow. Will stood beside her, gripping the console. "We have incoming on both sides. They're not shooting yet, but they're ready to." Aurelia nodded. Then we must make the first move, without firing. Will raised a brow. What, charm them with interspecies diplomacy? She turned to him, sweat forming at her temples. No, with truth. But before she could speak further, her knees buckled. Will caught her. Her hands went to her abdomen. Her eyes widened. The glow beneath her armor pulsed violently. Aurelia? It's starting, she whispered, voice strained. The child is ready. He froze. Now, in the middle of a battle? Her breath trembled. We are beyond schedules. An aide shouted from across the bridge. Enemy cruisers are charging rail plasma. Another officer, High Commander Solaria, is transmitting direct threat. Authorization for surgical strike on this vessel. We'll turn to them, voice cutting through chaos. Hold fire, no one shoots unless I say. The ship shook. A near miss. We'll turn back to Aurelia, her face contorted in pain, but her eyes locked on his. I will not die like this. You're not going to die, he said. You're going to give birth to a ceasefire. He lifted her, awkwardly, carefully, and moved toward the medbay. As he passed the crew, they stepped aside, not out of obedience, but reverence. This was no longer war. This was something older. Medbay inner quarters. Aurelia lay on a gravity cradle, sweat beading on her brow, her hands clenching into steel. Will stood by her side, trying to remember anything from emergency birth training. I should have taken that alien anatomy module in training, he muttered. She growled. Less talking, more support. The medbay systems flickered, readings overwhelmed. The sensors couldn't define what was happening. The life signature inside her was unlike anything in either database. Will grasped her hand. You're doing this. You're doing this. Her body arched, light burst from her skin, crackling across the room. Alarm screamed, but no one moved. Bridge, Varan 7. The comm suddenly picked up a broadcast. Unencoded, uncontrolled. A sound filled every speaker. A heartbeat, but it wasn't one. It was two, in perfect sync. And then 3, outer space. The two fleets, the Solari dreadnoughts and human destroyers heard it. Across both languages, it meant only one thing. Life. A new one. Unaffiliated. Untouched by hate. Unasked to choose sides. Back in medbay, Will stared as light enveloped Aurelia's body, and from it, something impossibly delicate emerged. A child. Skin like soft blue opal. Hair silver fine. Eyes golden, but with flecks of human green. And she was glowing. Aurelia collapsed back, exhausted but alive. Her voice barely a whisper. Is she? Will held the child in his arms, tears breaking through a lifetime of war hardness. She's perfect, he breathed. The infant opened her mouth, and the medbay shook. A pulse of pure energy burst from her tiny chest, ripping through the ship, disabling every weapon system within 300 kilometers. Outside, both fleets went dark. No weapons, no movement, just silence. Then, messages began pouring in. Solari flagship, what was that? Human High Command, was that the Queen's child? Civilian frequencies. We felt it on the moon. My son says it made him laugh in his sleep. Bridge, Varan 7. Will stepped onto the bridge, still holding the baby wrapped in Aurelia's royal cloak. His face was pale, eyes red, but something inside him had hardened. Not fear, not anger, resolve. He held the child toward the main screen. This is not a weapon, he said. This is not a claim. This is not an experiment. This is change. Aurelia's voice followed, weak but firm over comms. You can fire now. You can erase this moment from history. But if you do, the universe will know. And one day, she will return. The fleets did not respond, but no missiles came. Location neutral zone, 3 hours after pulse event. The entire system had gone quiet, no weapons fired, no commands issued, no flags raised, because across the stars everyone had felt it. Something had been born, not just a child, but a signal, not of war but of awakening. Inside the Varan 7, silence lingered, until the child cried, a soft harmonic sound like wind across glass. And from that single sound, panels lit up again, flickering not with alarms but with messages. Hundreds, thousands, some in Solari glyphs, others in old Earth code, all saying the same thing. We heard her. Medbay, observation chamber. Aurelia lay still, skin pale but glowing softly in her core. Will sat beside her, holding the baby as she slept, curled, quiet, and impossibly serene. You scared the hell out of the universe, little one, Will whispered to the child. Not bad for your first day. Aurelia stirred. Her voice was hoarse but resolute. She has no name. Will looked down. She doesn't need one yet. She is the name. Aurelia opened her eyes. That is not just poetry. That is prophecy. Aboard the Solari flagship, Command Bridge Commander Parks, one of the last remaining hardliners in the Solari High Command, stood grim and silent. His armor was flawless. His eyes were ice. He watched the feed from the Varan 7 on loop. The child glowing, the weapons shutting down, the pulse of energy that caressed, not crushed. Behind him, one of his officers muttered, "If that is real, then everything we've built is obsolete." Parks turned slowly. "You're dismissed." The officer didn't move. "Sir, she's not a weapon. She's a mirror. We can't fight this." Parks clenched his fist, then slowly, quietly, he opened a secure transmission line. Varan 7, Council Room. The hollow table shimmered to life. Parks appeared. Will instinctively moved in front of the child. Parks held up one hand. "No weapons," he said. "No orders, no threats." His eyes found Aurelia's. "You once told me that duty meant silence, but you found a voice." He stepped back and in one slow, deliberate motion, removed his war badge, the crystal embedded with the Solari Authority seal, and knelt to the child and to the new future. Outer systems, ripple effect. Across the stars, Solari garrisons began standing down. Human forces ceased all patrols near borders. Pirate groups, mercenary clans, even outlaw vessels began transmitting a strange new beacon, a single pulse, a dual heartbeat. Later, Medbay Dome, observation deck. Will stood with the baby in his arms, watching the stars through the dome window. Aurelia approached, one hand on his back. "She changed them," she whispered. "She changed us," he replied. They looked down at her, tiny, radiant, and smiling. Flash forward, Council Hall, 6 months later. The child sat between them. She was larger now, developing fast. Her hair shimmered between silver and gold. Her eyes held knowledge far beyond her days. And today, for the first time, she raised her hands and projected a memory. Not just a hologram, but a living scene. The snowy cave, the fire, the kiss. Delegates from dozens of worlds watched, breath held, and the child turned to the council and laughed. Location: Galactic Assembly Dome, New Concord Station. The hall was unlike any built before, not circular, not rectangular, but shaped like a spiral, winding inward toward a single platform. No throne, no weapons, just light, soft, inviting. At the center stood Will Watson, in a diplomat's uniform that still didn't fit him quite right. Next to him, Queen Aurelia, in ceremonial armor woven with organic fiber and human silk. And between them, small, radiant, impossibly poised, their daughter. The delegates gathered in respectful silence. Solari, human, Varnix. Even species that had not spoken in decades, sat not as nations but as listeners. The child raised her hand, and a living memory bloomed. It was not loud, not dramatic, just a campfire in the snow, a woman and a man, strangers, enemies, and yet, holding hands, a voice echoed, not hers but the scene's. Aurelia's first laugh. The audience didn't cheer, they breathed, together. Later, Docking Bay 7 Will sat on the edge of a landing ramp, legs dangling over open space. Aurelia walked over holding 2 mugs of clear root tea, a peace tradition from her homeworld. "You really still drink this?" she asked. He took a sip. "Tastes like burnt moss and regret. I love it." She smirked. "You're impossible." He leaned closer. "And you're over 8 feet tall. We all have our burdens." She rolled her eyes. "And yet you survived me." He glanced at their daughter chasing a light drone, giggling. "She survived us." A beat. Then Aurelia asked quietly, "Do you think it will last?" "The peace?" She nodded. "We'll look out into the stars. Only if we keep making it." Flash forward, Unity Tour, Planet Thalnura. The trio, Will, Aurelia, and the child, stepped into a council where no translator worked. Their daughter walked forward. She raised her hands, and from them unfolded memory. The moment of birth. The fleet silenced by her heartbeat. Tears fell on alien faces, and war veterans bowed their heads. No negotiations, no treaties, just truth played in light and sound. Final scene, personal log, Will Watson. "They said love was weakness. We proved it's the only thing strong enough to rewrite species. They said a child like her would divide worlds. She united them by simply being born. They said this wasn't the end of war, and maybe it's not. But it's the first time war looked at itself and backed down. Some say love is war. We say it built the future." She was born between fire and silence, not as a weapon, but a whisper of hope. On Sci-Fi Sky, Discover how love didn't end the war, it rewrote the stars. Do you believe in futures worth fighting for?